Good morning, everyone. We're just, we've opened the doors and everybody's rushing in. So please give us a few minutes here as everybody comes on board. We do have everybody on mute. And then at a given time, we'll ask certain people to take themselves off of mute. Give it another minute here. Still adding people. Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Tim Phelps. I get to be the Executive Director for TMACC, the Transportation Management Association. Welcome to our 2021 kickoff event here. I can't be more excited as we move every day further and further away from 2020. I do see a light at the end of the tunnel here for us. I can't believe it's been almost 12 months since we've been going through our work at home programs here with each of us. Today we have an exciting program that's ahead of us. We do have Madam Secretary Yassmin Gramian with us. She's got a lot of great things to say. Following that presentation, Tim Stevenson will give us an update on what's happening in the region and what projects are going on here in Chester County. And then we're going to round out the program with a Q&A session. In that Q&A session, we are going to include Kevin Johnson from TPD and SEPTA board member to talk about what's happening with public transportation here at the end. We do have several dignitaries with us, and I don't want to miss anybody because I'm looking at a screen of 24 people, and I know that I have 3 screens. If the senators at first would take themselves off of mute and introduce themselves to the folks here.
Good morning. This is Senator Tim Carney from Delaware and Chester counties. Welcome, Madam Secretary. Always good to see you.
Good seeing you.
I know that we did have a couple of other senators that were registered. Have they joined us? With that, then, if the House members that are with us, if they would take themselves off of mute and introduce themselves.
Good morning. This is Representative Melissa Schusterman. Happy to be here. Nice to see you, Madam Secretary. I'm looking forward to this. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you.
And have any other representative senators have joined us at this point? And I know County Commissioner Josh Maxwell. Josh, are you on the call as of yet? I know Commissioner Maxwell will be joining us also. Well, it is that magical hour. It's just a little bit after 8:05 here. It is my pleasure to introduce to you Secretary Yassmin Gramian to us. She was unanimously confirmed by the Senate in May 27th, 2020. I'm not quite sure if you actually have made it into the office at this point with the stay at home. She is responsible for all of PennDOT's programs and policies that we look forward to hearing about at this time. She is oversight of an annual budget of $9.5 billion. And then with that comes oversight of 120,000 miles of state and local highways, as well as 32,000 bridges, both state and local. She is directly responsible for 40,000 state miles of state highway and 25,000 bridges here in the Commonwealth. It also comes with the oversight of 11.8 million vehicle registrations, as well as 10.3 million driver's license. Sometimes we have that oversight, but that does fall into the PennDOT department in that. Probably during COVID, she has the responsibility of one of the largest stay-at-home workforces. The PennDOT offices have been closed, and I know that all the conversations I've had with the PennDOT staff have been remote. And so we know that remote work does work, but we know how important that office work is too for that collaboration. She does have over 30 years of experience in operation, design, and management of transportation infrastructure systems, not only on the highway and bridge side, but also then with rail projects, ports, and airports too with that. She came from the private sector, which is always exciting. She does bring that expertise to the table with working with large firms, where she was vice president of several different firms. And to round it out, I know that she's been actively involved in the community, but this is the part that really excites me for TMACC. She is a former TMACC board member. So we're pleased to have her with us today. Madam Secretary, the floor is all yours.
Thank you so much, Tim. I greatly appreciate it. I'm so glad to have the opportunity to speak with you and all the guests today. I don't need to tell you that 2020 was a challenging year. 2021 hasn't been much better so far. 3 weeks ago, I mentioned in one of my reports that we are on the upward trajectory. The vaccine is here. Congress approved the 10 billion stimulus funds for DOTs. Things should be getting back to the new normal where businesses are open, money is being spent, unemployment will go down to 4 to 5%, et cetera, et cetera. But I realized I spoke too soon. Things are likely to get worse before they get better. We need to continue operating on high alert. We need to be flexible and innovative to adjust to the external parameters that are influencing our business, such as the life post-pandemic, pressing issues with economy, businesses and policy implications as a result of pandemic, and so forth. Last month, we met with all 11 districts to go over their business plans. The district business plan becomes a living document for sustainability of their operation and maintenance of their assets. It will guide them on how to leverage their scarce resources, their staff, equipments, and funding. Some of the common feedback across the board from all districts include, quote, at the current funding levels, they anticipate an increase in poor bridges in 2022. Scope of work and costs will increase on many of the unfunded projects, if not funded in the current timeframe. They've been diverting construction spending to maintenance due to insufficient fund for the maintenance. The financial guidance, which we've been talking for a couple of years now, with the shift to interstate system, has reduced the base allocation on the tip. As an example, and I'm sure Tim will cover it with you, District 6, lettings for calendar year 2019 was at 565 million. And the lettings for calendar year 2020 was at 410 million. That is 27% drop from the 2019 program. The situation over the past 10 months forced all of us to take a hard look at our operations and figure out how we can continue to operate within our means under these unprecedented circumstances. At the core, our business is built on safety, innovation, equity, and funding. Needless to say that they are all interdependent. Today, I will focus my presentation on innovation, equity, and funding, as I've talked about safety many times. As you're aware, we had to accelerate modernizing our business during this pandemic. We have changed processes for digital signatures and seals on plans. Our vision is that by 2025, construction projects will be bid using 3D technology and no longer be a traditional construction plan format. We will leverage VR and AR technologies in multiple applications, such as public involvement, design field activities, bridge inspection and construction. The use of drones will also be expanded to cover construction inspection, bridge inspection, survey work, incident management, traffic and project sequencing are some of the examples. Also, for those of you who know Mark Kopko and are familiar with his work, you know that we've continued to make progress in the automated vehicle realm. We updated our automated vehicle testing guidance in September. Also, safety in work zone continues to be an area of our concern with automated vehicle. PennDOT has developed processes to improve safety in the work zone. PennDOT is developing a first of its kind statewide AV incident response plan. So first responders, which includes protocols on how to deal with any AV that is in an accident. And PennDOT has also developed guidelines for truck platooning. On January 11th, General Motors made an announcement that they will invest more than $27 billion in planned electrical vehicle and automated vehicle product. 30 new global EV launches planned through 2025. Are we ready to meet the challenges of this new technology, or better said, to leverage this new technology to improve safety, increase efficiency, reduce costs, and our spending in our operations and business? I seriously doubt it, but we need to ramp up our operations and spend more time in the technology part and the innovation part. Now I'd like to talk about equity in transportation. Transportation equity, along with building and supporting a diverse and inclusive organization, is another top priority for me. Race and transportation have long been intertwined. Whether it be federally funded highways that plow through or isolated minority neighborhoods, Rosa Parks and the Montgomery bus boycott, or segregated streetcars and trolleys. In 1990, two pieces of legislation increased community involvement and awareness of civil rights issues in transportation planning, but discrimination, while certainly less overt, remains today. In many cases, communities feel cut out of the decision-making process, resulting in ill-planned bus routes and a transportation plan more likely to benefit those with cars than those without. 34% of Black PA households do not have access to a vehicle, as compared to 8% of white PA households. In some cities, roads continue to pull apart neighborhoods, prioritizing commuters over communities. In Pennsylvania, both 2017 and 2019 12-year plan surveys, participation of Black, Hispanic, Latino, and Asian people was dismally low. Out of 4,800 respondents in 2017, only 62 identified, 62 as Black or African American. Out of 6,300 respondents in 2019, only 76 identified as Black or African American. Our Commonwealth's population is 10.8% Black, 7.3% Hispanic Latino, and 3.5% Asian. PennDOT has embarked on many initiatives within the current budget and enabling legislation. These initiatives will have an incremental impact, some short-term and some long-term, within the vulnerable population and communities of color. I'm pleased to share the following initiatives. PennDOT's on-the-job training programs was developed from the auspices of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 to provide an avenue of employment and economic development in the construction industry for historically and socioeconomically underserved people of color and women. The program authorizes federal funds to be paid to the highway contractors to assist in locating, qualifying, and increasing the skills of trainees and applicants for employment. The department has invested nearly $1 million in state funding for IT upgrades. Additionally, PennDOT is proposing to create a construction and consultant mentor-protege program to increase participation from Black American-owned businesses. The next initiative is a transit partnership to facilitate workforce development. PennDOT has created the Workforce Development Pilot Program to help eliminate transportation barriers in low-income transit-dependent communities. The program subsidizes transit service focused on providing access to employment opportunities in areas not accessible with the current public transportation network. Employers pay for a portion of the service, also will provide shift schedules to maximize effectiveness of the transit service. Local match of 15% will be required during the pilot phase. The pilot phase will run 12 to 24 months to determine local needs and feasibility of long-term commitment. The pilot is currently being proposed in 2 locations: Gettysburg to Hanover, providing 200 plus jobs, and Coatesville to Gap, providing 400 plus jobs that will go into effect in February. On the Coatesville to Gap, the service is aimed at providing good paying employment opportunities to residents in the city of Coatesville, whose poverty and unemployment rates are higher than national averages. Through this pilot, we are working to expand transit in support of economic growth at the local level, and we're proud to help facilitate this important partnership. I want to recognize and appreciate Chester County TMA efforts and support for working with Urban Outfitters and our Deputy Secretary Jenny Granger on the Coatesville Gap pilot program. It's extremely important initiative to the governor, Chester County, City of Coatesville, and of course to PennDOT. Finally, the grant program, I want to talk about that. And the grant program is designed to help underrepresented communities. Our current grant programs work against impoverished municipalities and neighborhoods. Often these municipalities don't have seed money to hire grant writers, lobbyists, or engineers to do basic studies required to secure these grants. Sometimes they aren't even aware of the grant programs themselves. Affluent communities have a huge advantage in this regard. We're currently working on the following initiatives: an incubator that provides grant writing expertise to these communities and neighborhoods, grant writing training programs, connecting with the planning organizations on their efforts, also working with DCED on this initiative. We need to nurture a diverse organization and foster an inclusive environment that encourages, supports, and celebrates our similarities and differences. It's so important that we have people with various backgrounds at the table to help tackle our most pressing transportation challenges. It's important that we look critically at the structure of our organizations and at what we are doing to combat the racism that, unfortunately, is baked into our structures and systems. We must be willing to have uncomfortable conversations around how we may have, however unintentionally, been complicit in upholding structures that do not serve everyone equitably. To that end, PennDOT has formed the Dismantling Systemic Racism and Inequities Work Group to catalyze change to the department. The group completed several activities, including assessment of all existing programs. I held one-on-one conversations with Black employees and other employees of color. Our team also developed a full report to continue work towards inclusion and equity. The report will be released in February. PennDOT is also in the process of creating a diversity council with dedicated staff that will continue to work towards implementing the identified recommendation and other agency diversity initiatives. Now on to funding. This may be the biggest challenge facing the department. As you're all aware, we're facing urgent, significant funding issues, both for highway and multimodal, that we need to tackle now. There's currently an annual unmet need of $8.1 billion for our entire highway and bridge system. In addition to the operational challenges we've faced, COVID-19 has also impacted our funding, especially for highways and bridges. In the early days of the pandemic, we lost a significant amount of revenue, at least $450 million. This was a revenue lost. We requested legislative authority to bond in order to keep our active construction program going as part of the normal budget process. This was a last resort request that followed many efforts to avoid it. The language on the bonding authority was removed from the fiscal code bill that was enacted, and we came incredibly close to shutting down active construction projects for the remainder of the fiscal year. As a stopgap measure, the governor directed PennDOT to anticipate pending and expected reimbursements to cover current construction and design expenses in the short term, allowing us to make payments on existing work, but we delayed the advancement of the planned projects that were to be bid in December of 2020, approximately around $300 million. The resulting construction program for calendar year 2020 closed at about $1.6 billion. As you've heard, the newly signed COVID relief package will include close to $10 billion for distribution to state DOTs to support roads and bridges. Since these funds will be distributed to states based on existing formulas, we're expecting to receive about $410 million by the end of January. The bill language also reflects a highly flexible approach to the use of these funds, ranging from personnel costs impacted by COVID-19 to backfilling planned and active contracted infrastructure improvement programs. The language portrays this distribution to be relief, I call it recovery funding, with no requirement to repay as a reimbursement program. We intend to use these funds to help cover the state revenue gaps in our construction program that we have faced as a result of COVID-19. We reduced the size of our overall construction program steadily over the last several years, from a high of $2.5 billion in 2015 to an intended $2.2 billion for 2020 before COVID. We reduced our program by an additional $300 million, as I mentioned, as a result of the pandemic to a revised $1.9 billion level. We postponed the remainder of the planned 2020 bids, and we ended the year at roughly $1.6 billion. From $2.5 billion in 2015, we're finished at $1.6 billion in 2020. We do have plans to re-engage our bid letting process for calendar year 2021. While we cannot be positive of the final program size for 2021 due to the uncertainty of fluctuating actual motor license fund revenue, with the relief funding, it is reasonable to project that the calendar year 2021 construction program can achieve at least the planned reduced level of $1.9 billion, with the potential of achieving the maximum of a $2.2 billion level. But even without the impacts of COVID-19, we knew the motor license fund revenue is flat at best and projected to decline. Gas taxes have become a less predictable source of revenue for transportation agencies across the country, and is the primary source of funds for PennDOT to the tune of 74% of our highway and bridge revenue. It is beyond urgent that we transition from reliance on gas tax. As our needs continue to grow and significant risks to existing revenues are identified, we as an agency are forced to look to alternative means of funding that are emerging across the nation. Recently, I've asked Ken McLean, whom many of you know from his time at District 6 Executive as PennDOT's Alternative Funding Program Director. Ken has served his entire career in the transportation industry as both a consultant and on the public sector. I've charged Ken with developing an alternative funding program for PennDOT, and he will be investigating various alternative funding strategies to help augment our current revenue sources. To that end, we recently launched a new initiative called PennDOT Pathways, through which we will analyze new future-focused sources of funding for our highways and bridges that could better serve our communities. As part of this program, we're embarking on a planning and environmental linkages, or PEL study. In this PEL study, we are looking at potential funding solutions and identifying which ones could be used in the near and long term to help build stable and dedicated transportation funding for Pennsylvania. We'll be looking at the feasibility of congestion pricing, managed lane concepts, spot tolling, road users fee, and more. Once we identify the potential funding strategies that best fit our system, we will develop a plan for putting them into action and start to fill in the funding gap for our highways and bridges. In November, we got approval from the state's P3 board to initiate the Major Bridge P3 initiative, a design, build, finance, operate, and maintain project delivery program for the replacement and rehabilitation of major interstate and expressway bridges throughout the state. Through this program, we will consider users' fee as permitted under federal and state law. The program will be developed in a manner that is geographically balanced statewide and in a manner that mitigates disproportionate socioeconomic impacts. So what are the benefits? This program will provide additional revenues to address major bridge deficiencies that might otherwise not be feasible with the existing funding. Importantly, it will remove the funding need for these bridges from our normal distribution of funds, freeing up dollars for the remainder of the network so that other important transportation projects can proceed. Over the next year, we plan to advertise the request for proposals for firms to advance individual bridges or bundles of bridges, select preferred proposers, and initiate design and construction. This new stream of revenue will also benefit the contracting community, the consultant communities, and the vendors by providing additional regional projects that will benefit everyone. Like our highway bridge situation, systemic and looming funding challenges existed for public transit before the pandemic arrived. The COVID-19 pandemic has had a catastrophic impact on public transportation ridership. Ridership in spring of 2020 was down 78% from the spring of 2019. Ridership rebounded slightly in summer and fall 2020, but remained 60% less than in 2019. As underscored in discussions with Amazon and other economic partners, transit access and mobility is critical in businesses' decisions to locate or expand businesses in our towns and cities. While transit provides millions of dollars in positive economic impact each year, providers have significant facility and equipment needs, not to mention the desire to provide more services to support Pennsylvanians who want more mobility options. Long-term sustained investment is critical for our communities to thrive and residents to be supported. Due to a federal law, we became responsible for operating costs for Amtrak, Keystone, and Pennsylvanian services, which run $16 million to $20 million a year. Half of these operating costs are funded through Act 44, which puts half of the funds in jeopardy when a continued funding absence. Act 89 modified the Act 44 of 2008. reducing the payment to $450 million for transit until 2022. Act 89 also defines that in 2022, the commitment becomes $50 million from the Turnpike, with $450 million to be provided from the state vehicle sales tax moving forward. If changes are made to this arrangement, we cannot meet the needs for the state of good repairs, projects, a reliable transit fleet, expanded services, or the initiatives needed to grow the support of our communities. We are currently working on a comprehensive transportation funding report, which will include all the studies done to date, such as the East and West Mobility Plan, DVRPC study that's ongoing, and other PennDOT funding studies. Recommendations made in all studies will be considered and vetted as we hold further discussions with stakeholders, lawmakers, counties, business chambers, and governor's office. So as you can see, we have a lot ahead of us and we can't do it alone. We're asking for the support of our industry partners to ensure that we collectively band our resources together in a common effort of transportation funding advocacy through the pursuit of alternative funding strategies in Pennsylvania. I'm so grateful for the open collaboration and dialogue that we've had with our partners in the industry, especially as we navigate through this challenging period. It has been critical and it will continue to be as we move forward. Thank you again for the opportunity to speak with you today. Now I'll turn things over to Tim.
Thank you, Secretary, for that. There's a lot that is going on. It's a continued conversation about how do we make transportation a priority here in the Commonwealth. Every industry that we deal with, transportation is touching that, and we need to find some solutions to this as we move forward. I told the Secretary this morning it's pretty easy when she says, hand it off to Tim. Having two Tims on the phone doing some leadership roles here makes it pretty easy. It is my pleasure to introduce you, Tim Stevenson. Tim is the portfolio manager here in District 6. Tim is here to talk about some of the key projects that are moving forward as we speak. Tim, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Tim. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Very good, thank you. So thank you for having me. Of course, District 6 is in the southeastern region of the state, and I did want to illustrate this one slide. As the Secretary said, our district executive is on a special assignment, and during this special assignment, we have Mike Riebert acting as our district executive. Many of you may know Mike Riebert from his time in District 6. He was the head of Chester County Maintenance for a while before becoming our ADE of Services, before taking a position as the district executive up in District 5, which is Allentown through Berks area. So that's the one administrative change to our district as far as our leadership goes over this past year. So quick thing about COVID, our district was one of the first offices that was closed back on March 13th, and then the rest of the state offices were closed on the 16th. And with that, we stopped all the construction projects as well as all design field activities. Now we started getting contractors putting together safety plans that allowed for them to continue work safely. And we restarted 9 critical or life-sustaining projects on April 1st, as well as we resumed HOP activities associated with critical and life-sustaining projects. By May, we were able to resume most of the construction out in the field. And in June, it was the yellow phase reopening. And as Tim said, we were still working from home for those that can work from home. Now, I do have a date at the top of the screen. That's December 19th. And I don't have anything on that, but what it was, that happened to be about the time PennDOT District 6 completed a giant IT refresh. With that, we were all went from a regular phone-based system to a Skype phone system. And we were all issued laptops or tablets. So when March 13th happened, we were able to go right from working in the office to working at home almost as effectively as we were in the office. So through Teams collaboration, we were able to very much continue and pick up where we had left off. So that said, when construction did resume, we were able to complete a couple projects unceremoniously, as it would be. We replaced the bridge on 322 just south of Downingtown, and put in a parking lot that was well received. That was, served as a trailhead for West Bradford Township. And during COVID, that parking lot got plenty of use as people were using the trails. We also finished our rehabilitation for the major bridge on 52 south of Westchester over the Brandywine floodplain. Again, we opened this bridge unceremoniously, and we were able to complete that even though there was a gap in construction activities in March. So COVID did impact us, even though we were able to work from home. We weren't able to receive bids for the month of March. In PennDOT, our contractors are allowed to be present for bid openings. And even when we were with the pandemic, we felt that they still needed to be able to be present. So we tabled our lettings in March. We did resume those in April at a remote location at our lab where the contractors could come and everybody could come in a safe location, not using elevators and things of the long. Courthouses were closed, and wet signatures were still needed for many things. So our right-of-way acquisition process was delayed for many projects. So we had a hard time hitting some of our milestone dates for projects. Obviously, public meetings, we were very much used to doing those in person, and we've started going towards virtual meetings at this point. And our partner agencies weren't necessarily as geared for the technology impacts or the need to use technology and work remotely as much as PennDOT was. So we've had some delays with working with some of our partner agencies. As the secretary said, we have been letting on average around $500 million a year in our district. 2020 was the exception. We had reduced our program after March. We were going to be letting around $450 million. We'd actually had advertised around $212 million to let on December 10th. Those lettings were tabled because of the funding uncertainties to January. And actually, we're looking to have a big bid opening, quite honestly, today. So some of the projects that we had advertised in December included that $109 million Route 1 reconstruction project up in Bucks County, just north of the Turnpike, as well as reconstruction and widening of 202 just north of Norristown, and some paving projects and other reconstruction projects in the region. So we've got a big letting schedule here in the month of January and February, and we're looking to let another $400 million from our district in 2021. One of the big projects we have yet to advertise includes a significant trail bridge project, which our partners in the city have been advancing. It is to construct a 3,000-foot gap on their trail for the Schuylkill River Trail. It includes a 650-foot long cable-stayed bridge, and you can see it's going to be a signature bridge. They give us this nice little graphic that shows what it's going to look like at night. God willing, it's going to be occupied and used in about 2 or 3 years. Another big project we're looking to let this year includes the widening of Route 1 just north of the Kennett-Oxford bypass, where we're going to make Route 1 3 lanes in each direction from where the Kennett-Oxford bypass ends up to about Longwood Gardens. This project's still in development. We're still having to acquire right-of-way and go through some condemnations, and we're doing some last-minute utility coordination. Big project, $6 million, and it'll be a welcome down in that area. We have a lot of projects still in design in Chester County, and of course this graphic is from our website that shows all active projects that are on the tip. I did want to highlight one of the interesting projects we've got that's actually not really for design at this point. It's more along the line of study. That's for Route 10. As you may or may not know, we've had a big Amish community moving into the western portion of the county. With our Route 10 project, we're looking at areas where we've got conflicts between the buggy traffic and obviously the truck traffic, and as well as vehicular traffic that uses the corridor. So we're looking at locations where we can widen and provide shoulders for the Amish to use, and we'll be reaching out to those bishops from the Amish community to talk about what links are critical to them, so that we can prioritize those dollars when we go towards trying to reduce the vehicle and buggy conflicts. Big projects coming up in 22 for construction includes one of course is this relocation of North Valley Road in Paoli. We're calling this the Paley Transportation Center Phase 2. It's in Tredyffrin Township. It includes that relocation of a North Valley Road so that we can have a bridge over Amtrak that has better improved visibility, as well as including a roundabout at the intersection of Central Avenue and North Valley Road. We're working in partnership with Amtrak and SEPTA on this project, and we're heavily involved in right-of-way acquisitions at this point and going through our permitting process. Another project that we're looking on advancing in 2022 is this 41 and 926 roundabout. This is, if you've been out in this area, crossing 926 with a truck carrying a horse trailer, you have a difficulty with the current skew. This kind of improvement will reduce speeds in general, make the intersection operate more safely. And it's part of what we're looking to do is construct more and more roundabouts and reduce vehicle conflicts and accidents. And then, of course, another project closer towards Westchester. This is, of course, the 202 at 926 project, where we're now close to completing our environmental studies. We've just gotten through coordination with the Museum Commission. It looks like we're going to be widening 926 towards the West Town Inn, where we're going to add to add a second left turn lane for 926 to head northbound on 202, as well as to add a right turn lane southbound at 926. We've got some big corridors that we're advancing that have taken some time. The Route 1 corridor down on the Kennett-Oxford bypass, facilities reaching the end of its useful life, at least the pavement is. It's 60 years old, and it was built in the 60s, so it's actually approaching 70 years old. I stand corrected. I guess it is 70 years old. So the way this is going to advance, the 110 is the lowest section. Then the 100 section is going from about 472 up to 896, and then the 200 section picks up from 896 and heads up to 41. And lastly, the 210 section picks up from 41 and heads up to the northern terminus of the Kennett-Oxford bypass. The Route 100 section is actually being advanced first, and they've actually started final design. One of the things we're looking at is adding roundabouts at the terminuses of those ramps. Here's an example at 896 where it didn't make sense to signalize these intersections. We're going to be putting in roundabouts at the terminuses of these ramps, while we also lengthen and improve the on and off ramps. In the 200 section, at 796, we're looking at signalizing those ramps where the municipality has asked for it, or where it seems to be the appropriate solution. And at 841, again, we're looking at doing roundabouts for some of those locations. This project, the Section 200 project's still in preliminary engineering, but we are getting ready to go into final design. And lastly, I'll speak about the Coastal Downtown Bypass. It's a big corridor, 15 miles. We've actually broken the corridor up into 5 projects. 4 are kind of listed here. The first one's actually out in construction right now, where we're putting up ITS elements on Route 30 as well as on all of the arterials to improve our surveillance and to provide better messaging to the drivers as to what to anticipate related to operations on the freeway and as well as on other roads. This project has been in development for some time. We've actually been able to advance some of the interchange projects primarily to the west. The Route 10, we have a preferred alternative for this location, where we're looking at terminating the bypass differently than it does today. We're going to relocate Old Lincoln Highway so that it would kind of come in as a T across from Compass Road, where we'd signalize that intersection. Doing this allows for all movements from 30 to Lincoln Highway, allowing for folks to go towards Salisburyville from either direction. It also considers land development activities that are being done. If you've been out there, there's actually a project that's well underway right now doing a lot of earth moving that will construct this future road and signalize this intersection here. At the airport road interchange, we're looking at a diverging diamond. Diverging diamond's modern interchange design that improves efficiency as well as safety over the existing diamond interchanges. This is the preferred alternative that we have for this interchange, and we're again doing preliminary engineering on this project, and we'll be advancing the overall corridor. The 82 interchange is the next independent project, and this one's we're still haven't selected a preferred alternative for this location. We're actually in the midst of talking with the Museum Commission about a historic property here and determining what the boundary is for the resource, so we can determine which of these alternatives would have the least impact to historic resources and help us move forward with our decision making. It does include some interesting designs. You see there's a roundabout here on one of them, a diverging diamond on another alternative, and lastly, we have a single point urban interchange design here. And again, we are really looking at how safety affects the operation of these facilities, as well as just generally how things would operate independent of safety. It's a big consideration for us moving forward. And lastly, I'll just say about the big section on the east that runs from Reeseville Road through 113 or to the end of the coastal downtown bypass. This section of highway is not been broken up into individual or smaller projects at this point, because we're talking about adding capacity, and we're talking about doing that smart here. So we have an AM and a PM peak problem where congestion is recurring. AM going, of course, towards Exton, and PM heading towards Lancaster. So we've got a situation where we don't need 3 lanes 24 hours a day. We really only need 3 lanes during the AM and the PM peaks. So we're looking at when we reconstruct this section that we'd widen the median to have the inside shoulders be wider than normal, and we'd be able to use those shoulders as we call flexible lanes, or allow for part-time shoulder use for the various directions. It has the opportunity to significantly reduce the overall cost of the project, as well as impacts to businesses and homes that line the corridor. And then lastly, we are in a big process of reconstructing, doing an expansion at the district office. While we've been away, we've actually all but completed the construction of a new parking garage, and we will soon be removing the existing parking garage and building a brand new expanded traffic management center, where we'll be able to better operate and maintain our ITS devices, but also look at partnering with our municipalities related to operation of traffic signals. And thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Tim. That is tremendous amount of work that's going on in here in Chester County, and we appreciate the investment in our road system here in the county, both from the safety side, but also from the capacity side, and also appreciative of that innovative look about where roundabouts need to go, and then also where we can put in those lanes. I mean, that's really important for us to talk about. I am going to quickly make Randy Waldemeyer here. Here we go. Randy has a comment that he'd like to share with us. I think it's really important, especially with coming through COVID.
And even before I do that, one thing I wanted Tim to elaborate on, if you may, Tim. Could you just speak to the Route 30 ITS project that actually is out on construction? It's almost, in my opinion, one of the most invisible but yet impactful projects in terms of how we make our corridors smarter and allow us to, not just rely on widening to solve the problems of 30, but allow the department to better manage a corridor like the 30 corridor.
Thank you, Randy. So there's recurring congestion, which is that daily congestion that occurs due to just general volumes, and then there's the non-recurring congestion, right? That's associated with incidents and accidents. The numbers of if you've driven on the bypass or had the pleasure of driving on the bypass, you will regularly see accidents occurring on the bypass, and they significantly impact traffic, right? So currently, much of the bypass is as I'll say, dark, where we don't see what's going on. We've got camera or surveillance basically covering from 320 to pretty much heading to the east. But everything to the west, if you've ever been on pa511.com, you will not see cameras for that section, nor will you see it for any of the arterials, right? So the cameras are going to allow for us to see what's actually happening on both the arterial system that supports the highway, as well as for the overall freeway. So we'll be able to tell people what the traffic patterns are and where congestion is, and be able to coordinate better with our first responders to problems as they occur, quite honestly.
Great, thanks. And actually what I wanted to do was circle back to One of the first projects, Tim, you mentioned of the opening of the 322 bridge in East Bradford Township. Just as I know, it was a focus of the prior Secretary Leslie Richards on PennDOT Connects, and actually this example happened before PennDOT Connects even hit the books, but it really exemplifies the same principles. If you're familiar, East and West Bradford had simultaneously partnered to develop a trail along 322. And then, you know, and in full disclosure, I had been involved with this when I was at the county prior to joining TPD, but collectively we became aware of PennDOT's your bridge replacement project near the southern terminus of the trail. And here was a prior photo, and it had this measly tiny little parking lot that could support maybe 10 cars. Of course, the bridge is right in the center. And so in joint discussions between the county and then PennDOT and first the townships, we said, hey, there could be an opportunity here to partner with PennDOT. And so this concept plan kind of developed. And I'm just bringing this all up because, you know, Tim, you and your team could have very easily said, you know, thanks, but no thanks. This project is scoped as a bridge replacement project. You know, this is going to add time and delay. But really, you know, in the PennDOT Connect spirit, we're all using public funds, and really, it collectively brought to life what has really become a tremendous amenity. So here's a project. I would actually note, TPD actually had the pleasure of serving as the department's construction inspector through this project. So in that capacity, I was kind of blessed to get these drone photos. So here it is kind of midway. So you can see the near retirement of the old structure and the trailhead parking lot taking shape. And then here finally, the final product with the old bridge retired. And yeah, 2020 was a crazy year, but I guess one of the stay-at-home consequences or outcomes was we then saw a tremendous appetite for getting outdoors, and so this trailhead really couldn't have opened at a more perfect time. You can see it's almost at capacity here, and even such that I was in the weeds of this project. I never even contemplated that the proximity of this parking lot would also serve to support kayaking and tubing. And all throughout the summer, again, with people trying to just make the best of a tough situation, it was awesome to see kayakers and tubers also take. So I just think it's the beautiful collision of when planning and design all come together, and PennDOT, Tim, especially managing a project like this. You had a big part of that, and I just want to give a shout out and say thanks. And it's nice to see when all this comes together in such a neat way.
And thank you, Randy. And then thank you, Steve, Tim, for that. I know that we have Kevin here. We have a few minutes to answer any questions. Kevin is a mentor of mine, and I appreciate all the insight that he's given me as I've sat in here, especially the conversation around the issues that are happening with SEPTA. Kevin, do you have a couple of brief words for that before we get into Q&A?
Yeah, as many of you know, I wear two different hats. One, I'm the president of Traffic Planning and Design, a 200-member engineering consulting firm. The other hat I wear, and I've worn it for about 10 years, is one of the Chester County members of the SEPTA board. And it's a role that I really love. It's all volunteer, but to be able to, advocate for projects not only that benefit Chester County, but for the entire region. And what was interesting was when for Act 89, I actually got to wear both hats when I served on Governor Corbett's Transportation Funding Advisory Commission, because I expected I was mostly there when I was nominated to be on that as a transportation person. But when I got there, I realized that my name tag always said SEPTA on it. And, as a board member, you're not necessarily in the weeds to know all the details on stuff, but I ended up becoming the spokesperson, even though there were two other executive directors of other transit agencies, but I was the one that had to do the speaking and presentation on why a portion of the state sales tax needed to go to mass transit, because it's bondable, meaning that you could, float bonds and use it to fund it because it's a dedicated source. And, when I first presented that idea to Secretary Shoke at the time, he said there was no chance that would pass. I said, hey, Barry, I've been asked to do it, and we're going to make the presentation. And I had to get briefed and educated by staff on bonding and things like that to do it. Made that presentation, and the vote out of the commission was 40-0 to 40-0 to pass it on to the legislature, and it did become part of Act 89. So it's interesting when you see something go from, we see it as planners and engineers going from the planning phase to the engineering phase to construction. This was something actually kind of the same way, but dealing with funding. And, it's something right now, it's quite challenging, obviously, knowing that Act 44 is coming due. Everybody kind of forgets that, that came about because we anticipated being able to toll I-80. And of course, that pilot project was rejected. So all of a sudden that put the turnpike in a severe crunch, and has put them in a severe crunch for quite some time. But that comes off their plate, as Yassmin mentioned, at the end of the next fiscal year. And so do have to come up with funding sources for that. So far through COVID, we've done pretty well because we've gotten so much funding from the federal government to keep supporting operations. But ridership is down, tremendously. On the trains, it might be in the, in the 5 to 10% range now. So, a 90 to 95% drop. Bus transit is down around 20 to 22%, if I remember correctly. So it's a huge hit overall, that's out there. And of course, in the future, everybody's not going to be going back to work in the office. A lot of people have learned they can work from home. So you're going to see reductions in the future as well, and something that, SEPTA is planning for. So quick introduction.
Thank you, Kevin. I guess, my first question with the multiple hats that we get to wear at TMACC and my background, Secretary, what are some of the things that we can do from the industry to help educate folks and advocate some solutions to the challenges that are ahead of us?
And you've been extremely helpful, Tim, and all the TMAs have been very helpful. I think the first thing is, understand what we are proposing in terms of alternative funding, where we are with that program. First of all, we need to really make sure that people understand where we are with the funding gap and how it's going to impact their quality of life. It trickles down to individual households. I mean, Tim just talked, or Randy just talked about this 322 bridge project. He's absolutely right. I live not too far away from this structure, and it has made a big impact along the 322 corridor, and the people who live in that area, the two townships, East and West Bradford Township, these are the kind of communications you have to bring it home to people in terms of what transportation means to them. And going back to the whole concept of PennDOT Connect is built and based on what is it that the communities are looking for, right? And with all the diminishing funding and situation that we're having, obviously the big interstate projects are absorbing most of our funding. Then it goes to the national highway system. And then there is very little left in the local projects. And then there is also this whole COVID situation, and we've actually lost some revenue that goes into the local communities, right? The liquid fuel tax actually went down, and there is less money available. And then there is less money available for the maintenance. All these challenges are going to impact the way we feel about ourselves, our lives, when we step outside of our house, whether it's, hopefully when things go back to the normal, taking our kids to school or getting to work somehow or visiting our parents or going to our doctors or anything else that's important to us for our livelihood. How is all this transportation impacting people's life and quality of life? Not to mention, transportation really goes beyond so many other aspects that's important to us. Health, I mentioned, telehealth, and we wanted to make sure that these projects that we are actually building take into some consideration, the big ones, whether there is an opportunity to include broadband. As you know, broadband is missing in a big portion of the state. This is another thing that we are looking into at PennDOT, is how we can expand, when we go into a major reconstruction, to include broadband into the construction of the projects. And when I say that, it's just putting the cables in there and then figuring out the rest. It's so important to have those basic infrastructure necessity when we're doing a transportation project to be able to carry on, with the essentials of life. So what you can do as an organization is bring it home to people, how transportation is going to impact their lives at the macro level and at the micro level. So they understand the importance of it. They also understand what we can do and what we cannot do, and what kind of solutions we've actually put in place to address some of these challenges. As I said, there are three areas that we're actually focusing, 4 areas. Safety is always a given, it's number one priority, it's ongoing. But then there is the innovation, then there is the equity, and then there is, the funding. Okay, and they're all, you can't separate one from the other. When we talk about, funding, if we have more funding, we can do more of these little things that will impact people's lives, right? When we talk about innovation, we gotta be ready. We have to have the broadbands. We gotta be ready for the transportation of the future, which I don't think we are. I mean, I have a major concern that, the private side is introducing these new vehicles, and we're not going to be ready to address how to regulate it, incorporating safety into our infrastructure, so many other aspects that we should be keeping an eye on. We noticed that in the personal delivery devices, it was approved, but we didn't have a lot of the measures in place to make sure that the municipalities, the locals, are comfortable with the concept. Okay, as a result, the technology is not going to be expanded, although it's a good technology, because the locals are not ready for it. There is a discomfort level. They're not going to be leveraging this technology. So these are the challenges we are facing, right? And with regards to innovation, we're really expanding the communication and the education program. And this is more COPCA is putting a lot of emphasis on, making sure that they reach out to all the locals to, first of all, they did a survey to understand what they know about AV technology. What is it they know? What is it they don't know? And then based on the feedback we're getting, we're putting a communication plan together, obviously. Okay, it's interesting. Some locals, rural areas may know more than some of the other semi-developed urban areas. The other thing I mentioned is the equity. Transportation is impacting everyone's life. The way it's impacting the rural areas is so different from the urban areas. And I tell you, there are things to be considered equally important in the rural areas. On the public transit side, you will be surprised what percentage of the people, I mean, you should know probably, Tim, we're in the urban area, right? But public transit is a big part of rural areas as well. So in some cases, up to 60% of the folks are relying on public transit for their livelihood. So what you can do is be a catalyst for us, be another voice for PennDOT, be an advocate for us. We need more people to talk about transportation so folks can understand the challenges and believe in some of the solutions we are proposing.
Thank you. I will tell you, when you talk about public transportation, I mean, as Tim pointed out in the safety features, when I'm with my TDM counterparts around the country, here in Chester County, we have to talk about everything from buses to buggies, and that's really showing the diversity here in Chester County. I do have a question here from Senator Carolyn Comita. She wanted to know a little bit more about the electrification of vehicles and the infrastructure that PennDOT may be looking at for that.
So, and that's a great question. We did receive a grant from the federal government back in 2019. And the grant was to look into multiple interstate corridors with regards to planning for the electrical vehicle. And this is just the future electrical vehicle charging stations, I should say. So as you know, there are some limitations with PennDOT as a state agency to get engaged with some of these opportunities. I would have loved to be able to partner, and maybe there is an opportunity to do a P3 for expanding this charging stations. But this grant, we're looking into, where the charging stations are, where they need to be, what are the technologies that we're actually being included in the electrical vehicles. So there's a lot of things that we are evaluating as part of the planning, and we have a lot of partners. We're actually talking to other states because some of these corridors go over multiple jurisdictions in multiple states, and we're developing a plan. The other part of this grant includes collaboration and actually putting a plan together to encourage and entice the private industry to come in and consider investment for charging stations. And so that's another part that we are looking into and we're developing. Can I say that we're ready for this GM big program that they're actually going to launch in 2025 with 30 different vehicles going all electrical vehicle? They're introducing back their Hummers and Cadillacs and all that kind of cars that's important to the public. No, we're not. So, and again, public is really rushing, ramping up, trying really hard to catch up, and that's a major concern of ours. Fortunately, we have someone who is very forward thinker. He's a visionary. Mark is actually looking into this. Our policy team is looking into it to make sure that we are at a point to be able to respond to the industry and to the public.
Great, thank you. I do have another question here. Is there any consideration or any type of project here in Chester County that would qualify for congestion pricing or a large P3 project?
Chester County, yes. I mean, do you have congestion problems in Chester County, Tim? If you do, then your project qualifies for congestion pricing. And this is both teams, Tim Stevenson, Tim Phelps. Do you have congestion problems? Chester County is one of the fastest growing counties in the Southeast area. I love it. It's a beautiful county. A lot of people are moving into Chester County. It's a pretty well-balanced county in terms of having it all. There are businesses in the counties. The housing is developed. There are great school districts. We have a relatively good public transit system. We can always do better. I agree. There are parks. They've done a great job with preserving, the greenlands, and we're looking into adding more trails and so forth. It's a pretty well-balanced county, and a lot of people, and it's not to say that it's still semi-affordable, right? Some parts of it is more affordable than some other parts. So people are moving into it. Great school districts, by the way. You see a lot of young people moving into Chester counties. You can see what's going on with all the apartment complex that are building everywhere in Chester County. Exton, Downingtown, Malvern, all places in Chester County, you see buildings and apartment buildings going up. So yes, there is going to be a lot of people moving in. I expect to see more congestion in Chester County. And when there is congestion, you know, as Tim talked about it, you can never build your way out of congestion, right? And I think we have to build our way, or actually address congestion through smart transportation, which is some of the ideas that Tim Stevenson talked about with ATMs, active transportation management, and it works.
So I know many municipalities here in Chester County take advantage of the Green Light Grow program, and you know, funding has been, you know, kind of an issue. Is there a timeline for additional funding or projects coming for the Green Light Go?
Tim, you want to take that question?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the Green Light Go program is an annual program, Tim. I don't know what the timeline is for it. I'd expect that we would be advertising for it as we usually do.
Okay, great. Yeah, I know that I know East Whiteland has taken advantage of working on the corridor here for their traffic signals, which has been a great help with congestion here in Great Valley. As SEPTA is going through some of their redesign work, what are some of the things that we need to think about for SEPTA's public transportation here in Chester County, especially when it's wrapped around the rail stations?
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's been a lot of work done out at Exton. I mean, it's been ongoing for, you know, what, 10, 15 years. It's many people forget that a lot of the rail stations are actually Amtrak stations. So not just Exton, but let's say even Devon, where there's not an Amtrak train that stops, that's an Amtrak station. But SEPTA, you know, does the majority of the work at all those stations. They've really upgraded Exton, expanded the parking, continue to look at that situation for enhanced parking. The township recently built a trail connecting the train station with Main Street at Exton to serve the public, because you used to see the goat paths going there and leading people there. SEPTA's also advertised 2 planning contracts. It's the first time they've ever had those. They've always had the engineering contracts, but they recently had 2 advertised for planning. And it's to look at issues like we talk about in Chester County. And Tim, you and I have been part of this discussion where you have, you know, the Route A bus operated by Craft. We have the services that are operated by TMACC, and then we have SEPTA's own service. And sometimes they, you know, appear to be a little disjointed. Some run over the same routes or very close parallel routes, and trying to make sure that we, you know, have everything there that is needed. And I know that's going to be one part of the planning contract, is looking at that and trying to figure out, you know, what can be done to support all of those different entities that are providing public transportation here in Chester County.
Great, thank you, Kevin.
Tim, I can add a little bit more on the station part to what just Kevin covered. As you know, there are 4 stations in Chester County, more than any other county in the state. There's been significant improvements, as just Kevin mentioned, to Exton that were completed last year. Construction will begin on the Coatesville station early this year, hopefully, and we're very excited about that. We also know that the Coatesville project will directly benefit the economic development work that the city, the county, the TMA, they've all been working together for this community. We're also making great progress on the Downingtown station. It's currently in design. I also want to mention at Parksburg, we're working to enhance short-term parking and improve access to the station. And I wanted to recognize the commissioners of Chester County. They've been behind all the station projects, and they've been a force. They're working with the local legislators and the leaders, and they're really, and also TMA, of course, you know, you've all been supportive of all the station works that's going on in the county.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, it's, you know, I will tell you with the work that we've been with Urban with the new bus route, and we're really appreciative of the governor's investment in this for workforce development for the city of Coatesville and for Urban. You know, it really has been a collaborative nature between industry, the county commissioners, and PennDOT. So we're excited about bringing that online. And we just firmed everything up the other day. This will be new for you, but that service will actually begin on February 8th. So we're going to be working with several different types of recruiters in the Coatesville area so that we can bring those jobs into Coatesville for individuals. So, but it shows that collaborative nature that's going on right now. I don't see any additional questions that are in the queue. We are at a magical hour of 9:18, and I appreciate everybody's time here on the call. And I want to be cognizant of that. If I don't see another question pop up here in the chat area, Jonathan, can you put up that last slide? I do have to look over my shoulder here. I have split screen monitors. We're excited that, there we go. So on February 19th, we are going to have Barry Seymour. We're going to work on a similar type of project as we did today. Barry is going to give that vision of DVRPC and where we're going and what has worked and not worked during COVID. And then we'll have two project managers talking about two, I think, good TDM projects that will help benefit Chester County in that conversation. One talked about tactical design work for testing out projects, and also potentially something that deals with cell phone data and how we can use that for integration into the work that we're doing. So I don't see any other questions in the chat area. Secretary, thank you so much for your time today. It's a great pleasure. It's been an honor to have you on board here and to have a TMACC champion at the head of transportation. It's awesome to have. Tim Stevenson, thank you so much for joining us today. It was great to hear about all the projects that are happening here in Chester County and the investment PennDOT is making, not only in Chester County, but in the region. And Kevin, you know, I know these are tough times for SEPTA, but, you know, public transportation is a key. I will share my quick story. My daughter takes the train every morning out of the Malvern station down into Bryn Mawr. And, you know, so we're still a strong advocate during this time frame to use public transportation because we know that it's still a safe and affordable way of traveling around our region. So thank you, everyone. Thank you very much to the board members. I appreciate your time today. Be safe and safe travels. Thank you.